I'm sorry, Chuck, you're here. Marty, are you here? Marty Wolpoff? Okay, I don't see Marty yet. Rosemary Ginty? I just saw Rosemary come in. Are you able to unmute yourself, Rosemary? Dan Paternak? Dan, are you here? All right, hold on, Chuck. I'm admitting many people in, so just give me one moment and I'll start over. Okay. Marty Wolpoff, are you here yet? Rosemary Ginty? Committee members, you are able to unmute yourself. So when I call your name, please press unmute. Okay. Dan Paternak? Sylvia Alexander?
Present.
Thank you. Bob Bender? Paul Ellis? David Gelman? Marvin Goodman? Tracy Pardo? Julie Reyes? Camelia Tepulis? Omar Murray? I did see Omar here.
I saw Oman before.
Yeah, I admitted him. Omar, you can unmute yourself. Okay. Nick Fazio?
Yes, Kira, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Omar. I did see Bob Bender come in. Bob, are you here? Marty Wolpoff? I just admitted Marty. A reminder to the committee members, you're able to unmute yourself. So if you're here, please unmute yourself and let me know that you're here.
Kira, Paul Ellis here.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
All right, Dan Paternak here, Kira.
Thank you.
We're here.
Rosemary's here. I see her.
Oh, we're not doing a roll call. Hi, it's David
We
Gelman. I'm here.
did. We did, David, but nobody could unmute.
in the house.
Kira, just I
Maeve
unmuted
and John,
myself.
we're all here.
Kira, it
Second.
is said
My
all
cookie
along.
crumbled.
Okay, all right, I see.
I don't know how.
Honey.
This isn't gonna work the way I had hoped. Okay, I see the committee members who are here. If I unmute everyone, everyone starts talking and it's very distracting. Rosemary, I saw you here. Chuck is here.
The only point is, it says the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. It is frustrating that you keep saying unmute yourself and we're not able to, okay?
Okay, well, some people were. I said unmute all. It worked for some people. I'm sorry it didn't work for you.
Kira, this is Bob Bender. I'm finally able to unmute myself.
Hi, Bob. Thank you.
Here, Marty Walpuff.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, can I be heard? So in second grade class,
Did somebody call me?
Chuck, would you like me to mute everyone and ask them to unmute when you call on them, or would you like everyone to be able to unmute themselves?
I think we'll try letting people unmute themselves. But if it gets out of hand, as you will hear in a few moments, then I'm going to go the other way, okay?
All right, thanks, Chuck. Let me know.
Do I have a quorum?
Yes, Julie Reyes just entered the room, and I'm going through and keeping my own record of who's here.
So am I okay now?
Yes, you can begin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are a significant number of people on, and obviously there is at least one matter that has attracted a fair amount of attention. So let me first check. Are any of the elected officials or their representatives on?
Assemblyman Jeff Dinowitz is on.
Oh man, yes, hello.
City planning is on as well.
Okay.
Jesse Lehrer for Representative Bowman.
Tyler Wong from Senator Biagi's office.
And someone's on from Council Member Dinowitz's office.
We have invited the Senate Majority Leader, but Senator Stuart Cousins, because the first issue has an impact directly on her constituency in Yonkers. So that will be an addition, and perhaps the assemblyman from that district will also join. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Merdler. I chair the Land Use Committee of Community Board number 8. We have a lengthy agenda, and the first item on it is one that has aroused considerable attention, which is the question of the proposed homeless shelter. Let me make a point to you which is critical to your understanding, and I'll be able to move this meeting forward as expeditiously and as effectively as possible. This subject has already been reviewed, and a resolution is, I believe, being drafted by the Committee of Health, Hospitals, and Social Services. Their jurisdiction is one that addresses various of the social issues here, the health issues, and the like. And they will have a resolution that will go to the board after it goes to the executive committee, as will we. We have a draft of resolution that was circulated. I apologize to the committee members for the multi-hour delay in the office getting it out, but we have one that is in the hands of the committee members, but we will not address the language of that until we've given the public an opportunity to be heard so that they can express their views, many of which may provide a basis for additional import into this resolution. Let me then start with the following final caveat. If you have something to add or say that has not been said by anybody else, we will call upon you in due course. 2, because I foresee the distinct possibility that there will be extensive commentary by the public, and they have an absolute right to be heard. Please try and keep it to a minimum and avoid my having to impose a time limit. That said, let me turn first. I see a hand up. Lorenzo Manzano, is it?
Sorry, that was raised from earlier.
Okay. Lesko Brandon, is this on item number 1? Lesko Brandon. All right, we will pass that.
I believe there's a few people had signed up in advance at the office. Kira, do you have that list?
Sure, and I just want to remind everyone, I have changed the settings on the Zoom. You're able to unmute yourself. If you have any issues, raise your hand and I can help walk you through them. Chuck, the folks who had reached out to the office are the following. Eli Avery.
Hold on,
Jane-
hold on. First name, I see he's here. Did you wish to speak, Mr. Louis?
Yes.
Did you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay, first of all, my property is right abutted to the woods and the rock that's being built. That was a residential lot. Now it seems to me they're changing it to a commercial. There's 3 lots there and then the stores. So it's not and it would be abutted right against my buildings. It's a 2-family house and there's 8 other houses there. And if they excavate the rock, the foundation will be gone. That 8 houses will collapse. I mean, you would have to have an extensive engineering study because we already have a problem.
let me ask you a question.
Because the drop is 30 feet.
Did you say that your property directly abuts the proposed site?
On the west of it, yes.
All right,
It's 6197 Spencer Terrace and 99 Spencer Terrace.
all right. Thank you.
And there's 6 other houses there.
Thank you. Who's next?
Damian McShane.
Aha, the former chairman of the board, Mr. McShane.
How are you, Chuck? Good evening, everybody. I'll just be very quick. I was also asked to just comment. I'm a member of the Riverdale Main Street Alliance Board. Its president, Chris Rizzo, is unable to join us tonight. He did ask that I share that the Main Street Alliance will be coming up with its own position paper on this facility, and they will share that with the board as soon as it's completed, hopefully later this week. I'm here today just to speak on behalf of a group of concerned North Riverdale residents. I want to specifically talk about, and I will be brief, I understand it's a long evening, about the fair share principle, which Assistant or Deputy Commissioner Drinkwater had brought up at the last meeting of Health and Hospitals, where she noted that this district did not meet the fair share criteria. I do want to note that she was looking at this somewhat myopically, only through the lens of her organization and not on the myriad of groups within New York City that support and fund supportive housing units across this district and the city. I would ask that the community board members seek out a 2009 report that was written by the Borough President's Office on supportive housing. And its specific intent was to assess the concentration of special needs facility in different communities throughout the Bronx. And its stated goal was to assist in the analysis of the siting of these new facilities. I don't think that the city has taken a look at that report in some time, and I would suggest again that the board and its members dust that off and take a hard look at where those facilities are sited throughout the Bronx. Just to give you a quick idea as to where we are as a district, 10, 11 years ago, we were in the middle of the pack in terms of the overall number across the entire borough, with about 37 different supportive housing units in our district. And supportive housing units have all different shapes and sizes. They could be low-income senior housing. They could be group homes for disabled adults. They could be group homes for at-risk youth, et cetera. I won't get into a lot of detail. But since that time, North Riverdale has seen a significant growth in the number of supportive housing units that have been cited here. So where there was 10 of the overall 37 supportive housing units housed in North Riverdale in 2009. Currently, there are 16 such facilities in North Riverdale. Essentially, there is no single home or apartment in North Riverdale that is further than 3 blocks from a special needs or supportive housing needs facility. In this district and in this city, North Riverdale has its fair share or is home to its fair share of supportive housing. And that's what this is about. This entire conversation is not in my back, about whether or not this facility necessarily fits in that location. There are major concerns with that. Those are a separate conversation. This is about the fair share provision in our city documents, as cited by the borough president specifically, in how these locations are chosen and how these facilities are cited. In this district, North Riverdale has the preponderance of supportive housing units in it, despite the fact that it makes up geographically a relatively small percentage of the overall district. The question to the board, the question to our elected officials is, will they go on record stating categorically, definitively, North Riverdale meets the fair share criteria set forth by the city, and therefore this facility should not be located in North Riverdale? In fact, I would go further, based again on the comments Ms. Drinkwater made on our earlier meeting, your earlier meeting, that she specifically requested locations from this board and from, elected officials for future sites. And while I understand that the board would be reluctant to do that, I do think it's important that the board identify locations where there should not be future locations, and that the board passes a resolution that asks for a moratorium on all future supportive housing in the North Riverdale area, given the saturation levels, for a period of up to 10 years. I would ask the same of any elected official who is on this call, in particular Assemblyman Dinowitz, who I thank for being out in front of this issue, but also State Senator Biaggi. This is a state-funded project, and it's critical that state officials go on record and educate their counterparts throughout the city and educate the Department of Homeless Services as to the saturation of supportive housing in North Riverdale, which would preclude the construction of this facility at that site. I want to thank everybody for their time. I again ask you, I urge you all to follow up and read the Borough President's 2009 report on supportive housing. If there is a representative from the Borough President's office, I would ask that they provide an update to that so that you can get the latest and greatest information and an up-to-date map on the number of facilities and where they are cited in North Riverdale. Although I have provided that through various online sources, it is something that residents of North Riverdale have paid close attention to over the last 10 years, as we have seen a 60% increase in the number of supportive housing units with little or no complaint. And again, I urge the board to cite that study and draw a line here that area is saturated. Thank you for your time. I know it's going to be a very long meeting. I look forward to meeting everybody again in the future. There will be a community meeting sometime in the next several weeks that'll be held at one of the local institutions, and we'll be sure to invite representatives from the elected officials as well as the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Damian. Let me note that City Council member Eric Dinowitz and Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz both are on the call. Let me also note for the district manager that I would appreciate it if she could, as promptly as convenient, obtain a copy of the report to which Damian made reference and circulate it to all members of the board at her earliest convenience. That said, Kira, who's next?
Sure, John McCaffrey.
Mr. McCaffrey.
width of the street.
Eli, you've spoken already.
Good evening, Chuck.
So-
John Caffrey. I've been a resident of Riverdale for over 60 years. I appreciate you guys looking at this the way you are. Eli spoke earlier about his property being on the shelf. What we've got there, Chuck, it looks like we've got an R6 zone abutting an R3 zone on the back end of the property. My question is does anyone know if that's one block and lot, or is that just three separate tax lots that are going on there? Okay, and just one other thing, getting back to what Damien said, and thank you very much, Damien, that was pretty thorough in what you were saying there. But what I was looking at also, as far as the fair share is concerned, the city seems to be getting around a lot of these properties by putting out requests for proposals, by which they bring in a realtor, like we've seen with the B6, which brings in a NGO, which will run the property, at which point it looks like the city is putting out a culpable deniability to being anywhere near it. So a lot of the properties that we all see along Broadway are not so-called city properties, but they are all funded by the city in some way or the state in some way. So they're able to put an arm's length to it. So at this point, I'm firmly against it. And I do appreciate Eric and Jeffrey Dinowitz coming out in front of this. I appreciate them being in the forefront. Thanks, Chuck.
Very well. Let me make a point to add to Damien's point. Not only has there been a significant inclusion in the area of homeless housing, supportive housing and the like, but our examination has shown that there are 5 facilities within 6 blocks, providing for somewhere between 600 and 700 individuals and perhaps more to be housed who have a need for public aid assistance and the like, not to mention those who come in by the hour at Riverdale Manor. That is a situation that in and of itself raises serious concerns. Before we go any further, is there any representative of the Department of Homeless Services on the phone or in person? Second call. Let the record show that in writing sent by the chair of the board and by the district manager, the Department of Homeless Services was invited and declined to attend. I had intended originally to put up an empty chair so that the people could see it. There were those who thought I ought to put up an empty suit. But putting that aside, they are not present. They are not present to make the case for themselves. And that is a factor that I, for one, regard as dispositive. Kira, who's next?
Leslie Hogan.
Leslie Hogan, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Leslie Hogan. I'm on the board of directors of 6485 and 6495 Broadway, a co-op that spans the city block from David Sheridan Plaza at Marshall Avenue to 259th Street. I've lived here since 1973. There are 128 apartments, 8 of which, 4 in each building, are on the first floor, level with the sidewalk along Broadway. My concern to this land use committee is that nothing can be built on Broadway north of Marshall Avenue because of the infrastructure of the sewer system on Broadway and the downward slope of the Broadway hill from Carroll Avenue in Yonkers. As you know, the New York City sewer system was laid down between 1850 and 1902 as a reaction to cholera epidemics in New York City due to inadequate disposal of human waste and other runoff. The sewer system on Broadway, built during that time, lacks the infrastructure to correlate with adding 1 more toilet, 1 more tub, 1 more faucet on Broadway. When it rains over 1/10 of an inch in 1 hour, there are overflows. On July 8th and on September 1st of this year, when there were downpours, the manhole covers on Broadway from 260th Street to Marshall Avenue blew up and landed 5 feet away from the holes because of sewer pressure. In the first floor apartments of all 5 buildings from Marshall Avenue to 260th Street, the toilets overflowed and flooded the apartments on the first floor with up to 1 foot of raw sewer water. At the time the sewer pipes were laid, there were no apartments on Broadway. The first one was built in 1929 at 210 West 262nd Street, having 89 apartments. Then 7 apartment buildings were constructed between 1958 and 1969, all of them with pipes feeding into the same 3-foot sewer main. Only hurricanes caused flooding on the first floors at that time. In 2008 to 2009, 12 new 3-story apartment buildings were built north of 262nd Street at the top of the Broadway Hill, just beyond where this proposal is being made. Such over-construction has severely overtaxed the 100-year-old infrastructure and is causing a health hazard to the toddlers and the senior citizens who live in the apartments that get flooded at the bottom of the Broadway Hill. There needs to be a total and permanent ban on any building on Broadway north of Marshall Avenue. The sewer infrastructure does not correlate with any additional building of anything on North Broadway. There should be no more construction on Broadway, period, unless you want some more cholera epidemics. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hogan, I have the sense, hopefully I'm right, that you were reading from a prepared statement. I hope that's correct, because what I would ask you to do is to get a copy of that statement, which is a really excellent statement, to the district service manager at the community board offices. The area of commentary that you put forth is appropriately one that the Health, Hospitals, and Social Services Committee is considering in its proposed resolution. And I want them to be able to have this as well as the members of this committee. So if you do have it in writing or can put it into writing, would you please do that at your earliest convenience?
Will do. I wrote it just an hour ago in order to
Good.
be able to say this quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen,
Thank
next.
you.
Ruby Dong, Ruby,
Next.
that's all I have, Chuck. Now we can turn to
All right.
those with hands raised, I guess.
Will people please raise their hands if they wish to speak?
Okay, Richard Espinal.
All right.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I'd like to quickly just touch, I've been living in the neighborhood for several years now, and I've also been working in social services for over 20 years. And I can say that without a doubt, in my experience, working with formerly homeless people, that this particular location is absolutely inappropriate. And what we're seeing here, and this has been said before, but it needs to be repeated, this is not the housing of individuals, but warehousing. If the city could put these people any further away, they would. Okay, they're basically trying to dump them into this neighborhood in an area that has very poor transportation options, no job options, in a food desert, and a place where they can get the kinds of services that they would actually need to turn their lives around and strive. And so this is really disgraceful that the city would try to choose this location and try to sell it as if it was something worthwhile, but in actuality, all they're really doing is warehousing these 130 men, dumping them into dorm-style rooms, and really just going to forget about them. And this is not what social services should be about. This is not what working with the homeless should be about. And this is not what I think people in this community would want to support if we're going to actually do what has been said already, which is open our community up to help people change their lives. And we've talked about all the various examples in which that's been happening around the neighborhood. I also just want to make the point that has been said, and I think the previous speaker pointed out very excellently, that
Mr.
this is a
Espinal,
neighborhood.
could you hold it a minute? Mr. Espinal,
Yes.
can you hold it just a minute? Will whoever is talking in addition to Mr. Espinal, please mute themselves. He's entitled to unfettered opportunity to be heard.
He has been muted.
Mr.
Thank
Espinal,
you.
you're on.
Thank you. And I just want to make one point, and I think that this is an opportunity, is as was pointed out by the previous speaker, this is a community that has very serious infrastructure concerns, whether it be the electricity, the sewage, the water lines, and everything else. And there is a proposal on the ballot tomorrow that guarantees all New York State residents in our New York State Constitution a right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. And I think that this shelter with 130 residents being dumped into our neighborhood is really an affront to that right that we have an opportunity to codify into state law. So I just want to put that out there because I think that this is something that we should be looking at very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Kira?
Michael Lee Cook.
Mr. Cook? Next.
Ruby?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Hi, I'm so sorry, like my microphone wasn't working before. So hi everyone, my name is Ruby, and my parents own the Chinese restaurant on 6669 Broadway, which is going to be a part of the 6661 proposal. So I'm not sure if everyone knows, but this homeless shelter is not just like the one building at 6661. It's going to expand to the entire block. So it's going to have 6 stores. So essentially 6 stores need to basically be destroyed, and like we need to be vacant in order to have this homeless shelter be built. And my parents have started our Chinese restaurant family business since 1997. So basically it's been over 24 years already. And essentially what this homeless shelter like proposal means to us is that we would essentially have to be closed and like forced out, because we still have a 4-year lease on our property, and our landlord never told us about like this project, and he just did it like kind of under his own plans. So all this is very new to us. But my point is like represent the businesses, and especially my family's business, because we've been there for over 20 years already. So we've been through like the ups and downs of the community, and having us to move because of a homeless shelter is pretty unfair. And I just wanted to express that.
Ruby, I suggest, this is Charles Murdoch, I suggest strongly that if this ever eventuates into anything, that you consult with condemnation counsel, in that this could be viewed as comprising a de facto condemnation, which would entitle you both to value of property and a loss of income. And so please, if this gets to anything, I would urge you and each of the store owners and other property owners to be in touch with a condemnation lawyer to discuss the issue with them. All right? Next.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you.
This is Belinda Hancock. I'm on Michael E. Cook's site. I have 2 pages. I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Belinda Hancock, and I live in 6629 Broadway, which is a block away from this proposal. Not only will it affect my neighbors who live in several story buildings, but from Huxley on back are private homes with family whose property would definitely be depreciated should this place be constructed. Also too, My building is right across the street from a park. And we've had occasion with people coming in with their shopping carts and all their worldly belongings, you know, they park there, they sleep on the benches there. Also too, I've seen them go into the woods to take care of their bodily needs. But the whole thing is you have a family orientated community here with children who come and even elderly take advantage of the small park across the street. Further up from where this proposal is a major baseball field and a larger park. Again, over the summer, I have seen individuals go into the park, whether they have backpacks and several bags of things, disappear into the park, into the woods, and either sleeping or doing whatever body function here. This is not a place for homeless people when you have a family orientated community. And up the block too, right on Carroll Avenue, is a facility for children and maybe young teens where they do their gymnastics and other training activities there. To have a homeless shelter so close to that also is a disaster, detrimental to our community here. And it's just like, we can't have that here. We fought too hard. People have lived here too long, and their cost of living will be significantly devalued.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me interrupt to note again that present throughout this entire presentation is Council Member Eric Dinowitz, Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz, and there are, I believe, representatives of Congressman Bowman, Senator Biaggi, and is there any other representative of a legislative member present?
I would just add that my representative from my office is also here, Enzo Manzano, also on the call.
And he's damn good, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, next, Kira.
Enrique? Okay, their hand is down now.
Yeah,
Nick Fazio? Hi.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Ryan Reek. I live in the building 6629. I feel this is going to be this project is detrimental to the neighborhood. And I've lived in Riverdale my entire life. And it just doesn't make sense to have a facility of that capacity when from the last meeting I heard that you're going to have a security guard in the building. They're not going to have any operations to be able to protect anyone from around the building. And it's not like you're going to have anyone on staff for any kind of mental care for these people who may not even be having any jobs. So where are they going to go? They're going to stay in the building, stay in the surrounding area with nothing really constructive to do or the means to help them better themselves at that large capacity, at this 130 number. As well, if you look at the crime right at the border, this is 2 blocks from Yonkers. If you look at the crime in that section and the amount of homeless that's been building up and just the access to no number of things, prolific drugs, and just the area, it's basically like building a rehab center near an alcohol store. You know, it's not right. And this is all supposed to be privatized. So I don't see how it's really going to even help the community in itself.
Thank you very much. Next.
Nick Fazio?
Nick, can you hold up? I'd like to do the members of the public first before the members.
Sure, Chuck. Just wanted to give some information to the business owner. And I think it was excellent advice you gave them. But this might fall under the commercial lease assistance program as well. So if they just reach out to the office, or I can have Kira email them the portal to sign up for that program, they might be able to look into the specifics of the demolition clause. So commercial lease assistance program.
Thank you, Nick. Next.
Inna, I-N-N-A?
Next.
Lesko Brandon?
Hello. Hello, this is Ina.
Hi, Ina.
Hi, sorry about that. The other question I have is how many people are going to be on staff in this proposed facility, and where exactly are they going to park?
And the
I
vans,
can't answer those questions at this stage. Part of the problem is,
and
let me
6
repeat
vans.
it for those who joined just now. We invited in writing the senior staff of the Department of Homeless Services, both in a letter from the chairman of the board and from the district service manager. They declined. That, in my view, speaks volumes. Next.
Let's go, Brandon. Ulissa Freary.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Hi there, I'm Julissa Freire. Thank you for having me as well. I just wanted to let you know that I had the opportunity to be interviewed by one of the reporters from Riverdale Press, and he would like to hear what everyone from the community he wants to talk to a lot of you. If you guys are willing to share your views, I think this would be a great opportunity to put our voice out there. And I set up a meeting this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And if you guys want to come, please text me at the following number, 917-952-5872. I hope
Repeat that.
I'll
Thank
say
you,
it
ma'am.
again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Charles.
Let me repeat, if I may, this is a long meeting.
Yes.
And its function is a little different from being a bulletin board. So we'd like to get specific comments. There will be a vote on a resolution, I believe, before the end of this meeting. So please.
Yes. My apologies, Charles. I just wanted to make sure that I got as many people as possible, because they need to express how they feel. And this is the only way that I can invite everyone.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Samsung Galaxy.
Yep, that's me,
What's your name, please?
Sean Riley.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Rowley, you're on.
So I actually have the unfortunate circumstances of having my ex-wife live in the Department of Homeless Services shelter. They did absolutely nothing for her but prescribe her prescription medication she did not need. Unfortunately, today would be her birthday. She died on April 28th from an overdose from prescription medication provided to her by the Department of Homeland Services. And they did absolutely nothing to help her other than prescribe her medications. She walked around like a zombie for 4 years. And that's exactly the type of people that we're going to see when this shelter opens up. My ex-wife had a daughter, and she had to wake up to find her dead mother in a Department of Homeless Services shelter because of lack of care. We're not talking about a group of people who actually care about the homeless people here. We're talking about people who see them as a commodity. They get more money the more mental problems they have. So they prescribe the medication to see that. We need to take that into account when we're talking about the people we're bringing into our community. And my ex-wife was from CB8. She was from North Riverdale. Thank you. Have a nice day.
No, Mr. Riley, I want to thank you. I believe that you will probably hear from either Michael Hinman of the Riverdale Press, who is on, or one of his colleagues, and certainly from the Health and Hospitals Committee of the board. I believe
Doris Gonzalez.
Hi. Hi, I'm Doris Gonzalez, and I'm a resident of 5500 Fieldston Road. And while the location of this shelter doesn't abut our property, it certainly really impacts our entire community. And one of the comments, so I am against it, obviously, but what I want to know is, can we find out what else can we be done, or is this a done deal? I'm just not familiar with what the process is and what I can do as a resident of Riverdale for the last 20 years to do my part and, continue to contribute to my community.
Well, one of the things you can do is vote tomorrow.
I voted early at the Riverdale Y. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get back to that. I don't think it's a done deal yet, and it may or may not be one. Mr. Lee.
If it's not, I can buy the land.
Yes, hi.
Right next to me.
Richard,
Did you see me?
You're on.
Okay. I just wanted to make two comments that I think would outrage the taxpayers of this city and state. I don't understand why there is a law that anyone who presents themselves is entitled to housing. Now, before everybody jumps on me and says that's a non-compassionate thing to say, I want people to know that there are out-of-state people who present themselves and they're entitled to housing. If we would just say, yeah, okay, you want to provide housing to whoever presents themselves, that's fine, but you have to be a New York State resident in order to be entitled to receive it. That's one point I want to make. And then the other point is, I don't know if people are aware, 2 weeks ago, there was an incident in Manhattan where two homeless men chased each other for several blocks, attacking each other. I believe it was around Penn Station. And for the homeless services officials to come and tell you these facilities do not present issues is just an absurd comment to make.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. O. Perez.
Hi, my name is Osman Perez. I've lived here for several years. I don't really have a vote for or against because I just don't think I know quite enough about things, but I do have a comment about the general approach that's taken in these meetings. I know this can be an emotionally charged issue. Everybody can have anecdotes about, I heard this happened over there and this, all that. And I'm not trying to denigrate all that. But as a fair-minded person, I do have an issue both the quantity and quality of these things, right? It feels to me like it denigrates the position of valid critiques and concerns when somebody can cite, for example, a 10-year-ago study as a basis for the situation on the ground today without wondering whether in the interim other parts of the Bronx have also seen an increase in the number of shelters they had to take in or other supportive housing. There's also the notion of getting a resolution to get the city to not allow housing, supportive housing in this area for 10 years, for the next 10 years, no matter how much the circumstances on the ground change, no matter what our portion of fair share is at that point, seems disingenuous to the original concern. And also as far as to quality of things, there seems to be this conflation of supportive housing generally with a homeless shelter in particular. So many of the concern I've seen around a homeless shelter in particular is rising crime, et cetera, without data provided that that's the point, or without qualifying whether it's a homeless shelter in particular is the problem or whether supportive housing generally being used.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Gloria Torres. You need to unmute yourself, ma'am.
Firstly, I want to thank everyone that's in this that has addressed all these issues, which I agree with most of everyone really that has expressed their views regarding the construction of this homeless shelter. Many years ago, I had a homeless ministry, and that was at Columbia Presbyterian. I don't know if anybody remembers there was a shelter there. And the church and I, we would go with a few people, and we would feed them and speak to them about changing their lives. And then we questioned them, what did the shelter do for them? Well, the shelter, all the shelter did was give them a bed to sleep in, and they weren't sleeping inside the shelter because they had to sleep with other people in the same room, and they said that there were a lot of fires, people were being attacked, so they slept in the subways. Okay, I'm not opposed to a shelter in an area where it's more feasible to have it, but not here in this neighborhood. We're too congested. And this is why I am asking that Assemblyman Dinowitz address the problem with the transportation. The number 9 bus as it is now is so congested. I mean, you can't even get onto the bus. And we have all the senior centers up there.
Ms. Torres, that's not the subject for this evening.
No, well, this is going to pose a problem for the commute for a lot of people. It is a problem. It's a problem now. It's right on Broadway, the number 9 bus. So this is a problem. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. So what I'm saying is that also, let me add to what I was referring to about the men in the shelter. I live on Broadway and Lakeview. And during the summer when the motel had the homeless people there, during the evening, during the day, all we heard were fires. We would have to call 911 every so often because there were outbursts of people fighting in the street and all. It was just it just was very, very, very disconcerting. And I believe that if we're going to house 130 men, this is going to be a disaster. That's my opinion. I believe it's going to be a disaster.
Thank you very much. J.K.?
Hi, thank you for the moment. You know, I've been listening and to these meetings for the last couple of times, and you know, it's very prevalent that the homeless have alcohol abuse problems, criminal problems, all these huge problems, and you're putting them in the inner city. Now, I was listening to Erin Drinkwater or whatever her name was, and she's saying they should be in the area where they're familiar and where they have family. You know, we have lots of upstate. I drive upstate and there's hundreds of miles of nothing. Why not a facility there where they can get some fresh air? Why does it have to be in the middle of an urban city here? You know, we have kids in Van Cortlandt Park. We have people taking buses. We have businesses. They're not going to come back at 10 o'clock. They're going to get a slap on the hand if they miss curfew. I don't care about their cameras or their policing. It's going to be another disaster. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Kira, I do not see any other hands up. Do you?
No.
Very well. Now let me turn to the members of the board, and I would urge all of the people who have spoken, who are listening, to pay close attention at this point.
Excuse me, I have my hand raised.
After you finish that sentence, 2 people put their hands up. I don't know if you still want to call on them. One is Margie Carrasco and the second is Bagley.
Okay. I'm going to ask both of them to hang on for a few moments. All right. I'm going to ask the board members to unmute themselves. And I'm going to do 2 things now. One, each member of the Land Use Committee should have received today, albeit late in the day, a copy of a proposed resolution, which we will discuss in a few moments. And I would appreciate it if you would, at the very least, skim the resolution part and hold the whereases unless you have time to reach them. While you're doing that, I'm going to recognize Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Jeff?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. I spoke at the last meeting of the community board, so I'm not going to repeat everything. But I did want to say a few things that I didn't say last time. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So at the last meeting, it wasn't a back and forth debate, but after I spoke and after the council member spoke, the Deputy Commissioner, Erin Drinkwater, suggested that, I don't think she used the word lie, but that's essentially what she was saying, I believe, that we were lying. We had spoken with her along with several of our staff members the day before that meeting. She made several representations to us on various things, and I based information that I had on what she told us. So either she had a change of mind in that 24-hour period, or maybe she was being less than truthful. But in either case, that really was not a good thing. I've lived in Community Board 8 since 1965. I was barely born, 1965. So I've seen a lot, I've been around a lot. And one thing which I remember not so long ago, almost 20 years to the date, and I know Chuck, Laura, and others here will remember it. I remember walking along Irwin Avenue about 20 years ago, and there was a developer who was building a building on Irwin, which was going to have a Riverdale Avenue address, of course. The bottom of Irwin Avenue is at the foot of a hill. And my comment at the time was, boy, they're getting awfully close to that retaining wall. And lo and behold, less than a week later, the retaining wall collapsed, Riverdale Avenue collapsed, and somebody should mute themselves. And it took almost 2.5 years for Riverdale Avenue to be restored. Thankfully, there were no injuries or deaths as a result of that very expensive retaining wall collapse. Why do I mention this? Because after this community gathering, which took place at the site a couple of Saturdays ago, I went up to Spencer Terrace. Is it Spencer Terrace or Spencer Place? But right up there. And where Eli was talking about at the very beginning of this meeting. And I went there to look, to see it from the vantage point of atop that hill. And I got to tell you, that does not look like a smart place to do major construction to me. And I really think that in and of itself is an issue which has to be very extensively looked into before anything could ever be done at this site. We don't need a repeat of what happened on Riverdale Avenue 20 years ago. That would be a big mistake. And people could also get hurt. In addition, I spoke to a couple of the store owners, including the lady who spoke earlier in the meeting. And I got to tell you, the idea that people who've worked hard for years and years, businesses, small businesses are getting slammed as it is. The idea that any of them would be put out of business in a very unceremonious way is really outrageous to me. There were 6 storefronts at that site just north of 262nd Street, in that, which I think is what this building would take up. And to put those 6 businesses out, it's just wrong. I know this board has stood solidly behind helping small businesses, and the city, it would seem, wants to do the exact opposite. We have no guarantees in terms of what the potential population of this facility is. The only thing we know for sure is it's going to be 130 men. We got no reassurances in terms of the composition. We know that a lot of the people are going to be substance users, people who definitely need help, people with mental health issues, potentially people who've been convicted of various crimes. But we were told, well, that's, we can't do anything about that. We take the population as we get it. And that really gives me a tremendous concern. Now, I don't base my opinions on numbers of emails and phone calls that I get, but I have to tell you, I have received hundreds now of communications from people in my district. And after all, I'm elected to represent the people in my district. When I think there's an important issue, I take a position on it. I don't duck the issue. I try to take what I think is the right position, but I try to be supportive of my community. And I am not exaggerating when I say that well over 95% of the people had the same opinion on this. And that is that this is a bad idea at 262nd and Broadway. And I'll go further and say that the handful of people who supported this, only one of them actually lived in the area. Now, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it's a whole lot easier for somebody who doesn't live nearby to say, oh, we need to build this. The people who live in the general area of the shelter are the ones who really count. And it's unanimous. The city can't make every policy based on whether the community is unanimous against something. But I think in a democracy, that has to be a major factor that has to be weighed in making a determination. So I stand by what I said at the last meeting. I think this proposal is a very bad idea that I oppose. And I know you're going to be putting forth a resolution later in this meeting, and I hope that that resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Councilmember Dinowitz. Thank you, Jeffrey. Eric?
Thanks, Chuck. Good evening, everyone. First, Sean, I just want to say how sorry I am about your ex-wife. I think that you spoke about kind of a lot of what goes on in our shelter system, and Ryan and Richard, you also spoke about the services that these folks are or aren't getting. That's a concern of mine too. And those of you who were at the last meeting know that supporting everyone, particularly those who are homeless or have mental health needs, is important. And that's why I've been able to allocate over $500,000 to this and secure affordable housing for people in the district, right? This is something that's important to me. It's important to people in the community. And what's I guess frustrating is a nice word I'll use, is when people who are supportive of the shelter call people who are not supportive of the shelter names and epithets because they're not supportive of it. But that's far from the truth. We're all compassionate and we all care. And I think it was Richard who spoke that it was his career, but he has deep concerns about this location. Others have concerns about services. I know Damien mentioned, does our community have our fair share? Assemblyman Dinowitz mentioned before that we were lied to, and there's no other way to put it. We were lied to by the deputy commissioner, or the community was lied to by the deputy commissioner. So we've had a subsequent meeting with Commissioner Banks, and we're going to be having more meetings with them. But at the very basic level, I did request information. I will tell you the information I requested to get some of these answers, right? How many, look. So we wanted I requested from the DHS a breakdown of individuals sheltered in each community district, because although the study that was mentioned is 10 years old, the article, and they sent me a newspaper article, was 2 years old. But in the newspaper article the DHS sent me, there were community districts with 0 beds. And I find that appalling that we're asked to take on more and more when there are community districts with 0 beds, but there are homeless folks coming out of those districts. So I asked for an updated breakdown of the individual shelters and shelter beds in each community district. A breakdown of individuals and families in the shelter system and where they come from. Importantly for our community, the services that they plan to provide for the clients in the shelters, the number of professionals conducting the work, and the hours of availability. When I first asked the question of the deputy commissioner about, are there going to be 24-hour services, or if someone's having a crisis at night, or someone needs services in the evening or early morning, 3 in the morning, midnight, whatever it is, are they going to have access to those services? And the response that I got was, well, no, but people sleep. Kind of rude, unprofessional. We heard later on that that's not true, that they're going to be 24/7 services. So we're getting this in writing. And what services are available? Is it mental health? Is it job counseling, drug counseling? We don't know the population that's coming in here. But I think it's what I communicated to the commissioner, that if it's anything like any of the other shelters in District 11, It's going to be a high population, a population of very high needs folks. And the last thing I request, and this was mentioned earlier by someone else, APCI, the nonprofit running this, they're going to get $137.74 per person per night. That amounts to $6.5 million a year. If you do 130 times, 137 times, times 365. That's a lot of money, even if you factor in social services that are going to be provided. And there is no clue, we don't have any understanding of what incentive APCI has to move clients into permanent housing when their only incentive seems to keep the number of beds they have full. Their goal should be to empty their beds. Their goal should be to provide, to transition their clients to permanent housing. So we did request the records of APCI's ability to transition clients into permanent housing and relative to other shelter providers in the city. So I just wanted to give the community a little update of the conversations we've been having, what we've requested. We're going to continue to press DHS for more information, but from everything we've heard so far and the communication that has and hasn't happened and the lies that I and the community have been told, I will reiterate that is why I am against this shelter.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, can please take a quick look at the draft resolution, and particularly the resolved portions. I have 4 hands and only 4 hands up. They will be the only additional people before the board members. I see yours, David. So let me do those. Let me just make a point for myself. This is not the first time that we have had DHS senior representatives before this committee. And it is certainly not the first time they have blatantly lied. That seems to be endemic. Mr. Bagley.
Hi, it's actually Mrs.
I apologize.
That's
I
okay.
knew the moment I said it, I was wrong.
You had a 50-50 shot. I apologize, my camera is off, but I do have sleeping children in a tiny apartment.
Ms. Bagley, could you hold a minute? Kira, will you mute everyone other than the board members and the person speaking?
Sure.
Ms. Bagley, I apologize.
That's quite all right. I wanted to follow up on what one of my lovely neighbors said earlier on in the meeting of the piping and our unfortunate flooding that seems to be honestly taking over all of New York City, as we can see with our ancient sewage pipes. My father-in-law worked for the state. He was responsible for Riverside Bank Park and the piping on that. So I asked him about the proposal. Let me just go on board. I am against it. I am not against housing homeless. I come from a family that is riddled with mental health and homelessness, and my heart deeply goes out to it. But I wanted to bring attention to my neighborhood that if this does go forward, even in the very infancy stage, the DEP does have to go and make the assessment for the 130 men, assuming maybe 180 toilets. You have to assume that they are all going to be flushed at once. You have to look at the extreme. And if not, that means the DEP must upgrade the piping in the whole surrounding neighborhood. That means every street, every building, every home is now going to be uprooted and redone. In an extreme case, you can look at what happened in Brooklyn once the Barclays Center came around. It's still not perfect. So just to add more insult to injury of, please, we are so congested. Do we really need any more buildings in our tiny little neighborhood that really can't take much more? And another thing, as I was on the call, I was really concerned about our green space. We are becoming very, very concrete. On top of that, we have in North Riverdale, we have 95 species of trees, and they are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I mean, I guess I'm just gonna go in circles that we're just viciously overpopulated, and for such a large building, I really concerned that our neighborhood cannot handle the build. It cannot handle the new pipes, which will inevitably have to be laid down. It's just, it just seems like a whole mess. Sorry, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Margie Carrasco.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My position, I'm against the shelter. I work right across the street from the shelter in the financial district where some of the residents for the Lucerne were transferred. I know some of you know that there are at least 7 third grade sex offenders without us even knowing. In the building that I worked, we're not only having problems with the residents, but also the staff. We have to call 911 several times for the security staff that has been getting high in the plaza and harassing our tenants. I personally been physical assault by the residents. We have a daycare in the building, and the residents go daily and exposing, defecating, doing whatever because they don't get the mental help they need during the day. And just last night, one of our security supervisors was hurt. He's still in the hospital until today because he asked one of the residents to leave the plaza. I'm seeing the problems day in and day out. These people don't get the help they need, but also they are sheltering anybody without filter who's going in and out. There are several elementary schools around that shelter. And like I said, we also on the New York Post, there are at least 7 sex offender grade 3. So this will be awful for our community. Just 1 block away from the proposed shelter, there is a school bus stop where my daughter take the bus to school on 261st and Huxley Avenue. So I don't think none of that has been taken into consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Heather Resnick.
Hi, thank you. I'm from 6645 Broadway, which is right next door to the proposed site of the shelter, and where my 80-year-old mother still lives in her rent stabilized apartment, where my 9-year-old and my 7-year-old spend quite a bit of time, as do I. My concern here is mostly around safety. And where is my mother going to be able to afford to go when she can no longer be safe in the home that she's had for over 45 years? The ratio of 130 men to 1 security guard with cameras around the building does not make me feel safe. And my concern is around safety and the size. 130 men in the square footage of that corner is way too large. And also, if this is the land use committee, this is right across the street from a city park, from a beautiful city park, or has the potential to be a beautiful city park. Is this really how we want to best use that land? I can't imagine that it is, but thank you for hearing me out.
Resnick, thank you. Franca.
Great. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. So my husband and I, we're opening a deli on Mosholu Avenue this winter. We have been saving for decades to build this business, put in every penny we have and pennies we don't have into it to contribute to the community that we love so much. We are compassionate and we believe in helping those less fortunate, but we cannot understand how this shelter benefits the homeless population. It appears to us that those who are really to benefit are the bureaucrats and NGO executives who have been compliant this plan with their $160 per night price tag. Warehousing 130 men is not benefiting those who are less fortunate for the reasons already stated, whether it be transportation, facilities, access. But more so, we have a real security concern for our future employees who will be reporting to work as early as 6 o'clock in the morning or working until late night. There appears to be very little concern for us and our fellow business owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Franklin. Mr. Riley, I know no person who has a greater need or appropriateness to speak, but can you keep it short? It's the second time.
My apologies, yes. The one last thing, I was a little fired up before, but the last thing, I sent a column from an older article to Mr. Dinowitz, Eric Dinowitz. Ms. Drinkwater was citing stats from this same period that this article was written. And it was from the Daily News. And it was about how they juke the stats for stigma reasons. It actually states it clearly in the article that they base down actual violent acts and drug use in these facilities. And it's clearly written in that article. And the stats that Ms. Drinkwater was using are from 2017, 2018, from when this article was written. Please just have all your members read that article. I think Eric Dinowitz has a copy of it. At least I emailed it to his office. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, you have in front of you a copy of a resolution. What I would ask you to do in the first instance is to take a look, if you have not already done so, at the resolved portions of that draft resolution so that we can focus primarily on that. I will acknowledge that people such as David Gelman, who have paid close attention to this stuff, have called to my attention areas in the factual recitations which merit massage. We can do that with ease after the meeting. If you have any comments, I'm happy to receive them. The critical issue is going to be the resolved portion. So let me first ask each of you to take a look at those if you haven't done so, and let me then call to your attention the thesis of the resolution. There are already 4 contemplated facilities generating 600 to 700 people that are in need within the handful of blocks right here that are proposed to be added to. If I have ever seen a case of oversaturation, this is it. Willowbrook went down for even less than that. That was for the mentally ill. It was saturated, not to the degree that this thing is. Number 2, there has been an absolute refusal on the part of DHS to come before this committee tonight. We've asked them in writing. I'm not surprised. My reason for being unsurprised is simply that there are tough questions that have got to be addressed candidly and honestly. And not the least of them is, how do you not comply with the process? And that's where the major failing of this proposal is, that requires you to communicate with the community, to seek input from the community, to seek input from the elected official, to seek input from the community boards, the borough president and others. And above all, to engage in some planning in terms of locating a facility. For those process reasons, and for the absence of planning reasons, I think without getting into any other issue, you have a basis to act on the 3-part resolution, which is as follows. 1, that there has been a finding that there has been a process failure and that it impacts directly and materially upon the request. 2, that it is time to call upon the elected officials, and I note again that Assemblyman Dinowitz, Councilmember Dinowitz are present. There are representatives or were representatives present on behalf of Congressman Bowman, Senator Biaggi. I believe that the Senate Majority Leader will also have input here because of the Yonkers impact to it. I don't know if any other elected officials are present, but it seems to me they have a duty to, without question, impose a process mandate on this rogue agency, which just doesn't follow any process. Neither does it even tell the truth. And that's not the first time. Every member of the board who was here in 2017 knows that they flatly lied to us at that point. So those are the kinds of things that you need a process mandate, as you have in various other contexts. And finally, that until process is adhered to, and process is articulated in writing that they must follow, I would urge that this proposal be deferred. You have before you that three-part resolution. Go to the fact portion. Second, I want to see if we are on board with respect to the resolve portion. Any members of the board wish to be heard on that? Please raise your hands.
Camelia and Bob Bender have their hand up.
Well, let me go to Bob first, if I may, Camelia. Bob.
Sure. Thank you, Chuck. With regard to the resolution, I'm going to abstain simply because I feel this is too important an issue to make a quick judgment without having had the opportunity to carefully read the resolution. I saw it only moments before I logged on for the meeting. But of course, I'll have plenty of time to read it and study it before the exec meeting and the board meeting. But I do want to make a statement that I think will make clear where I stand on this issue. Years ago, before I joined the community board, I did some homeless outreach down at the 242nd Street subway station on Saturday nights during the cold weather months, along with a number of other volunteers. And we would provide coffee and sandwiches and some clothing to the homeless men who rode the subway. They were mostly older men by the standards of homeless facilities, men in their 40s and 50s. And when I first started doing this, I asked them why they didn't go into a shelter on the cold nights. And to a man, and they were all men, without exception, they said the shelters were too dangerous. They didn't want to be in there. There were too many young guys who were starting fights, stealing things, and they would rather ride the subway all night. And nothing I have heard or read or seen in the years since then leads me to think that the situation is significantly different now from what it was back then. My heart goes out to people who are homeless because they lost their jobs, they had a medical crisis, they couldn't pay their debts, things that could happen to anybody. I feel terrible for those people. And if that's all we were talking about with this facility, I might have a different attitude. But the problem for me is we have people who could be in there, who could be mentally ill and psychotic. And I know the vast majority of mentally ill people are not dangerous. We have people who could be in there who are violent criminal offenders. And I know the majority of people in jail are not violent, and some of them shouldn't even be in jail. But we have no way of knowing who's coming into this facility. We've asked about this. We've been told that, they don't screen, they don't keep people out because they have a criminal record and so on. We just don't know what we're going to be getting. And my concern for the community is that we could be getting people who are not taking their medication. We could be getting people who are violent. And with the small number of staff that they have in that facility. And we don't even know the level of training that these staff members will have. I have real concerns about the security of the neighborhood in the vicinity of this shelter. And I just cannot see how I can support it.
Thank you, Bob. Let me just make one comment on this screening point. We are a wonderful nation in terms, as you know, of wordsmithing. We take a word that's a simple word and we throw into it a whole variety of things. Under the rubric of homeless, we have people who are schizophrenic. We have people with sexual offender records. We have people who are handicapped. We have people of all kinds, nature, and description. Some of them are among the most needful people in the world, and we have a moral obligation to take care not just of them, but of all of them. But we do them separately. You put those who need medical help in a place that has medical attendance. You put people who have mental conditions in places where there are people who can deal with that. You put sexual deviants in places where they cannot get in trouble with the community, etc., etc. This, the Department of Homeless Services has consistently refused to do. And in and of itself, that to my mind is a fatal flaw. You know, one of the problems is, among words, we use the word corruption in a very specific sense. It doesn't necessarily mean stealing. It means debasement. And when you debase the public's right to know, the public's right to participate, the public's right to exercise their franchise and be partners in governing their city, you are corrupting the process. Someone who has served in government for 50 years, this is without a doubt, in my mind, the single most corrupt agency of government in the United States. Camelia Tepeles.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me just very quickly ask the office. I have an email in my inbox from 9:05 this morning. It's just the agenda. I do not have any attachment. I would love to review very carefully this.
Camelia, I'm sorry, I muted you while I was
You want to
trying to
unmute?
answer. Yeah, sure,
Okay,
Camelia,
sorry, do you hear me?
I will resend that over to you now.
No, but can you tell me, because I'm in front of my computer literally, can you tell me when it was sent? Maybe I'm not seeing it.
I sent it out late. I sent it at about 6 or 6:15 this evening.
Okay, but then an important point to mention, and I think I saw it in a conversation borough-wide with the community boards, there will be in the future a minimum of 24 hours required before any resolution be discussed and circulated. I think that's coming in the pipeline, just to notify in advance. Let's not have this with like an hour prior to the meeting. Thank you. I just on the specifics, I'm heartbroken to hear the community. I endorse all points that our chair made, but ultimately I have to conclude the same as Bob Bender did, meaning I would have to abstain simply because I feel like we do not have sufficient in writing information from the agency concerned that would give us a better view of the facts. I was doing, can I please finish and then I will stop. I was doing a little bit of research because from a different community boards, I remembered a certain map of the Bronx with different community boards and the number of shelters they host. I didn't find that. However, I did find this New York Times article that probably some of you referred before, including the statistics from 2017-18. And on our on Riverdale, there is a red dot. It's divided into red dots and blue dots. The red dot on Community Board 8, particularly that area, is that more people became homeless here than are sheltered here. So more people living in North Riverdale, including the wife of that gentleman that passed away, became homeless in Community Board 8, then received the sheltering services here. This doesn't tell us something, but qualitatively, it does tell us something quantitatively, meaning that we do have a percentage of our population that, due to a variety of reasons, being COVID, economic hardship, drugs, mental illness, I don't know, LGBTQ young men kicked out from their homes, a variety of reasons which, esteemed Chair Morler, you pointed out that are encompassed and embedded in the word homelessness. That population does need shelter somewhere as possible, close to home, as close to home, quote unquote, as possible. So based on that reasoning and all the other things that Bob Bender mentioned, as long as everybody else, I would also have an abstaining position, but I would love to read the resolution, and thank you I'm sure you put a lot of work into it. Thank you.
Ms. Tevelis, let me just tell you that we don't have a written statement from the agency, not because we didn't ask for it, which we did. The chair asked for it in writing. It asked for their presence. The district service manager did and asked for their presence. If they stonewall you, don't blame the board, don't blame the community. You are right. The resolution came to the board members late. I apologize for that, although it was not my fault, I assure you. What I would urge you to do is read it, and by the time it gets to the board for a vote, hopefully you will have had an opportunity to read it. Let me just make a point that you should have in mind. In that resolution is a statement, specific and deliberate, that the board recognizes in clear and unmistakable terms that people have an obligation to take care of the homeless, take care of the needy, and to do anything they can to facilitate that. None of that is undermined by the resolution. The resolution says, in this case, where you have oversaturation and a violation of land use restrictions just on that ground, or at least their underlying premises, where you not only have oversaturation in a specific area, but you also have a failure to adhere to any sound process. And a failure that doesn't tell you, you have no way of knowing whether this entity that will manage it is going to be more likely than the one that just went bankrupt to be able to be a fiduciary that is responsible. You don't have those facts, not because we didn't ask for them. You don't have them. My point is, read it and you will see Dan Paternak.
Oh, thanks, Chuck. So, look, I guess my initial concern is that we don't have an agency here at the land use meeting. I did attend the health and hospitals meeting and I asked some land use questions, but there's a lot of information we don't have about the building itself. The one thing that really struck me in that presentation was that they said there would be up to 8 men in a single room. When I asked the size of the room, they said they didn't know. They said they would send us that information. I don't know if we received that information. I don't know if you received that or not. But there's many land use, my point is there's many land use facts and factors which our committee should be dealing with, which we haven't seen because the agency isn't here. There's a lot of stuff. First, I'll say your be it resolved. This is extremely well written, this resolution. I poured through it. I agree with each one of your be it resolved. I think it's something that this committee and this board should have put out, for a while. And I hope that our elected officials, and I thank the Dinowitzes for appearing this evening, for coming to these meetings. It's important to see our elected officials at these meetings. And I hope they bring a bill forward to deal with it. I guess I have concern with the resolution and some of the whereases. And while the whereases aren't the resolved and it's different, I think, I take issue with naming some of the other institutions in there, two of whom I know that we've worked with over the years and kind of putting them into a certain light. And I guess my concern is with the whereas clauses and some of the information that we don't have and the missing information we don't have. And Chuck, I ask as a question, did we receive any response or any indication from DHS? Like, do we know why they're not here tonight?
The only thing I recall hearing, and Laura, are you on? Laura?
Yes, yes. They
Uh,
said they had a conflict for tonight, that they will absolutely attend a future land use meeting, that we give them questions, they will respond in writing. I have already asked for the winning RFP and contracts and things that came up at the last meeting. I have not received them yet. In fact, I asked Eric, when you spoke with them, where's that winning RFP request for proposal that will show a lot of the information we want? So tomorrow, we will send out a list of questions, of requests for information. They said they definitely will come. They will come back.
So,
They're not here tonight. They said, and we said, send another representative. They wanted to send their senior staff. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just telling you what you said. Why did they say? This is what they said, Dan. They will come to a future land use meeting.
So Chuck, I just have a silly question. Did we ask them for a date?
we asked them to come forward with some open dates. We haven't gotten anything.
Okay, no, that was it. Just wondering. Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. David Gilman.
Yes, thank you. In line with Dan's comments, I think our job is to address the substance of proposals presented to us and to question them and the context. And I think that this proposal, such that it is so far, has neither. And I think that the resolution, as you've crafted it, basically addresses the lack of substance and the lack of context for them. And because there are some severe questions that remain open. For example, Ms. Carrasco mentioned the shelter downtown as a relief valve from the Lucerne on the Upper West Side. And I used to live there for 17 years, and I lived through its renaissance as an SRO residence into a rather hot tourist hotel. And then last year, amidst COVID, DHS moved a lot of people in there because they wanted to reduce congregate settings, but they didn't put, the issue really became they didn't provide the services and the security around it. And I know that neighborhood very, very well. And the fact that they haven't identified that kind of information for us is a concern for me, but I will, wait for their response to our resolution. Thank you.
Rosemary.
Yes, Chuck, thank you. I don't want to repeat what other people have said. I will say very simply, and it's painfully obvious to me. Non-attendance is inexcusable. It's inexcusable. This is an important issue, but for this community and for the agency, and not to show up is inexcusable. How can the community questions get answered? We get asked, we don't have the answers. They're the ones who have to supply the answers. So your resolution, that your suggested resolution, which I concur with, is dealing with this process is hard. It's horrible. I'm going on too long, but this is it is inexcusable they're not here. If one does not have a good process, you are guaranteed to have a bad solution. A good process is the beginning of public policy to get to a good place with an issue. Okay, this is the end of the administration. To me, it's a failed administration when it comes to the homeless. And to do this with 2 months left after 8 years is failed process. Thank you, Chuck, for the resolution. I am happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Ellis.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for the resolution. The points that you and Bob Bender made, I agree with completely. I agree with the concerns about process. I I think like many of us, I'm troubled to be in a position where we feel as though we need to move forward with a resolution with incomplete facts and with an incomplete record, because, as Rosemary pointed out, they should have been here. Somebody should have been here, and they weren't. They put us in a really awkward situation on a very important issue. I guess what I would ask Chuck is, I mean, in terms of, trying to make up for the failures of their bad process, is there anything that we can do in terms of process? How soon could we meet them at a point when they can
Pardon?
With my phone.
Where's your phone?
how soon could we meet at a point when DHS might be able to be present and answer some of these important questions? Doesn't make sense to defer on this resolution until that date has occurred, or is that not practical under the circumstances?
Understand what this resolution does three things. It does not reject this project out of hand. It effectively seeks to defer until we start having a process in place, not just for this instance, but for the others. Secondly, it does direct specifically that the members of the legislature and of the city council asks them to take a good hard look at mandating a process. Again, it's the process rather than the specific proposal. And lastly, it says this has had a failure of process. And it is for that reason it's turned down. If they can come forward after this is adopted and show in substance that there is good reason to have this, be my guest. Happy to have them do that. But until then, there's been a failure process. You can't countenance that. You'll have that every time. Simplest thing, don't show. Well, that's my view. I will tell you what shapes my view. I spent 10 years on the MTA board trying to deal with the failures of DHS to properly attend to the homeless riding the subways, attacking passengers, urinating anywhere they pleased and the like, and causing real serious problems. Every time we tried to address it in a train station, a subway station, and elsewhere, it was an abject failure after 24 hours. This is a problem. Yes, it's not as bad as San Francisco. It's not as bad as Beverly Hills, but it is a problem. And it's a problem because there is no attempt by the part of those who run the process to work with the people of the city of New York, 99.9% of whom are decent, good people who would work with them because they understand the needs of those who have needs and the needs of the homeless. There's no such effort to work with them. It's a diktat from on top and people who hold a job, a former advocate for the homeless running it. That's okay to be an advocate, but work with people, not ignore them. That's why I said that this is something that debases the entire process. So that it is my strong recommendation we adopt the resolutions. I will mess with the whereas clauses very simply. I have no problem with that. They were intended essentially to communicate information to you. And if they are prepared to come forward, I will guarantee you we will host them as quickly as we humanly can so that they have their opportunity to speak and persuade. That's essential. But how you persuade when you have so many facilities in such need right at the city line where there are just a dearth of services to help the people, and where you are causing a problem in a park that's right across the street. How can you have kids running around there and in the woods when you have this kind of a situation? It's not right. I feel strongly about that, and I apologize.
Understood and agreed, Chuck. Thank you.
Omar Murray, Chairman of the Committee on Health, Hospitals, and Social Services. Omar.
Good evening, Mr. Murdler and everyone that's attending tonight. First and foremost, I want to say to Mr. Riley that my heart goes out to you on the loss of your wife. It's very sad. I wish that could have been prevented, but my heart goes out to you and your family. Now, I heard a lot of people are saying the agency is not here and we should be they're going to abstain or we should wait until the agency is here. But the fact about it is that there is not any process for a government agency wishing to put up a homeless shelter to come to the community and engage the community. There is not a process. There's not a policy. There's not a law. So, I know that this resolution, I spent hours talking to Chuck. This resolution was crafted good and properly, and I do want to express my support for it. And I want to ask the board and members of the Land Use Committee to forward this resolution as his. Now, the DSS came to my committee and they spoke. Numerous questions were asked. Some of them weren't answered, particularly about staffing, financial. As I recall, the Aging Committee chair asked that question. They weren't answered. They were requested 3 times to come to the Land Use Committee meeting, and they stated that they don't have anything new to report apart from what they reported to my committee, so they could not have come. Totally unacceptable. The Land Use Committee is different from the L Committee. They should have come. That department is a huge department. Even if one person could not have come, then they could have found someone to come. This process has not been thought out. You have businesses, parks where kids play. I mean, my kids even play in that park as well, pre-COVID, well, post-COVID. Or sorry. It's not a good idea. It really isn't a good idea to have this homeless shelter in that location. They should have at least come tonight to talk to the community and hear what the community has to say, or at least request alternate locations. They're not doing that. They're stonewalling us. So I am in support of this resolution, and I ask members of the Land Use Committee to forward this for a full board approval. Thank you.
Martin Wolpoff. Thank you. Thank you very much, Omar.
Thank you, Chuck. I did attend Omar's meeting, and one thing that came out of that meeting, as far as I'm concerned, is that DHS has made no real plans and have nothing real to share. The property is not theirs. Contract has not been written and signed. The agency did not provide staffing or what kind of services they would provide. They gave us no information because they had no information. And so that's probably why they're not here, because they still don't have information. And I think our holding them to the fire that they have to tell us something is totally on target. In addition, the whole section you've written about setting up a legislative process similar to the Padovan law, and I lived through the development of the Padovan law, when the agencies first decided that they could establish group homes without contacting the community, just fait accompli, the Padovan law required that there was a process of communication. I believe we need our state legislators to establish the same kind of program and policy.
Thank you, Marty. Nick Fazio.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I skimmed through the resolution. I just got it just now, so I apologize to Omar because while you were talking, I was reading it as well as Marty. But I think the spirit of the resolution I'm in favor of because of the process that it sets up. And I think that the way it is drafted, or at least the spirit of the way it is drafted, it would essentially prevent situations like this, whereby the organization would have to have some of these answers, thought out before coming to the community. And for that reason, I'm in favor of the resolution. And I think it's, at least in terms of some of the specifics of the whereases, I can see where there might be some concerns there, but other than that, I'm in favor of the resolution.
Thank you. I see no other hands from board members. May I have is there a second to the resolution?
Second.
It's a mix of pro-feed nutrients that prepares hair without the weigh down. And has a formula that's just
Somebody mute.
Second.
Please. Hello.
I'm trying to figure out who that might be.
Okay. We now have a resolution. We have a second. Is there any further discussion by a board member on the resolution? There being none, would all those, I think maybe Kira, for propriety, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Sure. One moment. Charles Merdler,
Yes.
Marty Wolpoff,
Yes.
Rosemary Ginty,
Yes.
Dan Paternak,
Abstain.
Sylvia Alexander,
Yes.
Bob Bender,
Abstain.
Paul Ellis,
Yes.
David Gelman,
Yes.
Marvin Goodman, Tracy Pardo, Julie Reyes,
Yes.
Camelia Tepulis,
Abstain.
Omar Murray,
Yes.
Nick Fazio.
Yes.
Okay, it passes, Chuck. Chuck, it carries.
Thank you. Would the members of the board who have any questions of any kind or any proposals of any kind concerning the whereas clauses, get that to me during the course of this week. And I would expect that barring some strange circumstance, it will be dealt with in the whereas clause. I thank you for your attention and move on to the scenic place complaints. Let me, if I may, just give you a couple of minutes. There have been a number of complaints concerning compliance with SNAD on several of these houses. Jutan took a good hard look at them pretty quickly and concluded, correct me, Jutan, I believe you're still on, are you not?
I'm here, yes.
Concluded that there was compliance. Subsequent to that, I forwarded that finding to Jody Colon, one of the activists who've been monitoring this SNAD compliance, and she has concluded that there are some specific problems. And I have forwarded that in turn to Jutan. What I would like to do with this item is the following. Jody, if you would have a communication with Jutan, and Jutan, if you would speak with her and see where this situation is. My nose twitches in terms of this being a total compliance. That it happens across what looks like 5 buildings and 1 developer doesn't smell right. All right, so would you do that?
Sure, Chuck, happy to. I did alert, oh gosh, maybe 5, 6 years ago about the 3061, removing the steep slope and building the wall. But again, you know, we are having a lot of DOB just shrug thing. Not you, Jutan, I appreciate that you dig into things for me, but the inspectors show up and say, oh, I don't see anything. So yes, Jutan, please, you probably have my email. I'll email you just to update you. And I can share with you what many neighbors have been telling me that they are concerned about, but are of course sometimes hesitant to speak up. So, and the issue is there's a house that was just sold. So if we can make sure that the developer, who I thought I saw his name on here as well as the architect, you know, just to remind them that as of right means you have to do it right and follow the rules. And there are 2 more lots that we believe are up for sale now. So that's the entire block.
Jutan, can you work with that?
Yeah, Jody and I have each other's contacts, so we'll be in touch to follow up.
Let us know at the committee, all right?
Great. And Chuck, some of the other people who had registered the complaints might also be on the call. So if, you know, I don't want to speak for them if they have things to say.
Yes, thank you,
Avram
Jody.
Hannock. I see one of them, Dr. Avram Hannock.
Yes, hello. I just wanted to quickly summarize the issue, which is that they took a charming 2-story brick structure, demolished it, replaced it with really a generic 4-story structure, which blocks views and has none of the charm of a Riverdale structure. I understand developers have to make money, but they're taking the rules. Instead of adding a story, they had 2 stories, but they sloped the top story into a roof-like structure. So it kind of hides the fact that they're raising it much higher than they're supposed to. And they completely demolished the structure. They first keep a little bit of it, and then the brick, then they cover it with siding, and then they remove all the brick. So they're demolishing it. I don't think the original idea in Scenic Place or in other areas of Riverdale was to demolish structures and to make 4-story buildings out of 2-story charming houses. And that's what they did. I wish they could reverse what they did behind me on Scenic Place. And there really is loopholes in the law which allows this extra 4th story just by making it into look like a roof, and also allows them to demolish by sort of keeping a few bricks and then eventually taking them all out and replacing them. Right now, they have a 4-story white aluminum siding structure next to my house, which is much taller than expected, much taller. So I'm hoping that the politicians on the line, if they're still there, would work to close that loophole. And perhaps even, I'm hoping that they could somehow, the flouting of the law could be remedied in the structure that was built already. But yes, they're buying other structures, they're buying other houses, very charming houses, 13031 Scenic Place, and they are planning to do the same thing. In fact, I'm told that they already bragged about it. So this is something that to help keep the charm of Riverdale, which we all enjoy, we have to stop. Thank you.
Dr. Hannock, here's what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind. If you could put into writing the points you have just made and amplify them to the extent that you think is necessary, and get them over to Eric Dinowitz. I know he pays attention. I know he follows up, and I know he will do so here. He has not only himself on the phone, but he has an immensely capable staff who will work with you on it and get it done. All right?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Rosemary, you?
David, you want David, you want to go first?
Well, if you don't mind, while it may be dark outside, I'm looking right out over this, and I have no idea what you're talking about. So at the very least, Jody and Jutan, I hope you will include me and frankly, Rosemary as well, because we are the closest residents to this. And I don't know about you, Rosemary, but this is news to me.
Oh, okay, can I go now?
Yes,
Chuck?
yes, please.
Okay, so I want to thank the people, the residents, the local residents here for raising the issue at a very early stage, David. It's a very early stage, and this is very good to have the information now. I never want to relive what we went through with the other house on Scenic Place, okay? We never want to relive that. And this is so important to have the information early on. And there's just one point, and it goes to Jutan, and it goes to us on the Land Use Committee. There is one piece of property on sale for, I'm told, $10 million. There is no way the house is worth $10 million. But it could be 3 houses. You could have 3 zoning lots here. And that's what can make it valuable. Therefore, in the SNAD district, the creation of new zoning lots can determine development. Haven't we said this before? This was in, Chuck, this was in our, the community board put this in our SNAD request. Change the approval process for creating new zoning lots. Do not make it a certification from city planning. Bring it to the community board because it is determinant of what the development would be. So I put this out ahead of time. You don't have to tell us, Jutan, if there's an application, but this is the kind of thing we want to know about early on. Again, thanks to the local people who are highlighting this at an early date. Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, there are no applications right now currently that we're working with on Scenic, anywhere on
Thank
Scenic.
you. Thank you.
Tom, will you, if you can, let us know if there are any that come down the pike, please?
Sure.
If I may, Jutan, was a building demolished?
No, no.
Okay, fine, because I haven't seen any heavy equipment in the vicinity. That's why I'm puzzled. Okay.
Chuck, may I also add that the office has been in touch with the Department of Buildings on all of these complaints. There have been several stop work orders. I have been in touch with Jutan, and I believe there was a sale to be closed on today. And that's why we added it to the agenda. We invited the developers. They declined to come, but I will continue to keep you informed about any progress.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I will definitely go check it out. Thank you.
Eric, if you're still here, Eric Danowitz, is your assistant with us here by any chance?
Hey, Chuck. Yes. Hello.
There you are, Lorenzo. Lorenzo, I would like you to do the following as a favor to me. Would you please be in touch with Rosemary and David Gelman, as well as Jody Colon? Pull together these facts, call them to Eric's attention after you pull this together, and let's get a legislative amendment here, because this is not an isolated problem. And I note the developer has now shown up with his hand up, and I will recognize him in a minute. But I will tell you, this stinks, and that's a polite way of putting it. All right? I say that because Mr. Gallardo or Galeda viewed the concern as, quote, BS. It isn't BS when people are zealous of preserving a natural area district against the activities that seem to raise some very serious questions. Mr. Galeda, you're on.
First of all, thank you for letting me speak. I can clear up some things here. I think a lot of things. BS was the hassles that I've been going through doing a simple remodeling job. We didn't tear down a house. It's an existing house. We remodeled it. Michael Goldblum did the architectural work. He followed the building and zoning regulations. I don't know what more we could have done. I've been working in Riverdale for 25 years. Done many, many projects. Probably a lot of people know me. Yeah, I don't know where this is all coming from, but I'm happy that everybody, you can find me anywhere. Most know my number. These can be resolved. We can be talked about. I don't know what else to say about the project. It's all a shock to me. Let's put it that way. The stop work orders are because the city does that quite a bit right now for just about any reason. You'll get a stop work order. So we had one for, I don't know, some type of permit issue, some blocking, very minor things. As regard to the other house, yes, I own the other one on Scenic down the street. I didn't buy it yesterday. I am not tearing it down. Those are all rumors. I don't know where they come from. I bought 2 months ago. The lady has since passed away. She lived there until she died. She was 104 years old. We're simply going to go in, change the kitchen, paint it, clean it out, repair the decks, repair the roof. We don't plan on doing any additions or nothing that requires any architectural work. Just a simple clean it up, paint it, and resell it. Pave the driveway, things like that. Improve the house, like I believe we did with the first house. So if there's any questions, I can address them now. You can call me. I'm always reachable. I'm in Riverdale every day. Happy to discuss anything.
So then
Thank you for your time.
Let me take you up on that. Jody Colon is a person who has done more in this community than virtually anyone I know in terms of trying to preserve and protect it. She will, I hope, reach out to you and see if we can find out what's going on and what can be done. Is that all right, Jody?
Thanks for volunteering me, Chuck. Scott, happy to chat with you, share some of the concerns and questions. You know, this is not just specifically about you. We have had some terrible experiences with developers on that block and also in the community. And everybody's very concerned and doesn't want to go through some of the repeat fights that were very traumatic. So happy to have a chat with you if you're interested. I'll Google you and find your contact info.
Sure, you can, or I can give it to you either way.
I wouldn't say it out loud with a couple of hundred people on here.
I don't know how Googleable I am. That's the word. I don't. You could try Googling me. If not, whoever. There's a lot on here that know me. They can give you my number.
Jody, I will share you. I will share with you the contact information.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, happy to
All right,
discuss
thank
anything
you.
with anybody.
Me too, Kara,
Okay,
David.
let me move on, please. We have some more to go. I thank you, Mr. Galeta. I, of course, thank you, Jody, and I will promise you this. I will volunteer you again in the future.
Thank you all.
Item number 4 is 326, 318 College Road. This is the Encore Performance. Mr. Dorfman? Mr. Dorfman, Hal?
Yes, I just had to unmute myself. Hello, Charles Mergler. Nice to be here. I'm here to answer any questions and to talk about the new proposed single-family dwelling at 318 College Road in Fieldston. And I'd like to start with talking about how we have addressed one of Seth Goldstein's concerns about being deficient on the trees. The law was in the SNAD district and/or we have now complied with the and the or and not one or the other by adding 3 additional trees. In addition, I'd like to talk about how the intent of the SNAD district when it was created back in the early 70s was to preserve steep slopes, rocks, trees, and other natural features. The law created certain sections that allowed city planning to modify coverage requirements, setbacks, yards, in order to meet the goal of preserving trees, steep slopes, rocks, and other botanic environments. So therefore, the house that we've proposed has been worked out thoroughly with Jutton Horseman and other members of city planning in order to meet those sections which are specific for modifications in order to preserve things, and thereby allowing for modifications to build the house in order to preserve natural features. To build a house in Fieldston of substandard size is doing a disservice to the private family who wants this house built. So based on the programmatic requirements, we came up by increasing the front yard, by maintaining the north side yard, by saving and preserving the natural features to the west, including the steep slope, the trees, and maintaining the required buffer zones. So in short, I'd just like to restate how we've been working with city planning on this to comply with the intent of the law for over a year on this project. And it's now just come before the Land Use Committee in order to be referred out for the comments of the community. So I open up myself to questions on behalf of Mr. Lamb and his family, who have retained me as their architect to make this presentation.
Al, my concern here, primary concern at the moment is, while you have a proposed easement and covenant between your building and the existing one, it's no more than about 8.5 feet, which is less than is generally provided, does not provide, in my view, for adequate light and air. And I want to know, is there any way you can deal with that issue?
There are no windows on the side of the house that require light and air.
It's wrong for the neighborhood. It sets a standard in the Fieldston area and elsewhere that you can do this kind of stuff. Now, I've seen you take buildings and move them sideways in order to comply with zoning, and doing a magnificent job of doing it. I want to know what you can do to open up between these two buildings.
We could relocate the house into the steep slope area, which I've been told is a game stopper. And other developers in the past have used safety valves to basically overrule SNAD rules to the detriment of many, many houses in Fieldston. That happened many years ago, and I do not want to repeat that. And my client would love to build a house in the steep slope area. He'd love his house within the trees. But to build a house to meet his family's programmatic requirements, we have moved the house into what would be a smaller level area of the lot in order to preserve the trees. So we also designed the house that there would be no windows on that side of the house that would require light and air rules. The easement is put in place for construction and for future maintenance.
So the bottom line is there is not anything you can think of at the moment to deal with that, right?
The only thing we can do is we can ask city planning to provide us with modifications to both side yards. We can shift the house 4 feet to the north and have a 4-foot north side yard and have a 4'6" south yard, thereby increasing the space between the buildings from maybe 11 feet to 15 feet, which we've shown you at the last meeting. There are a number of houses in Riverdale, in Fieldston, that have that spacing between the houses. So we could do that, and we could ask them to do that. And I think that would be a detriment, but we can do that.
That's interesting, Juton. You might want to make a note of that and see, take a look at it. All right, let's see. There are people other than me who wish to speak. I believe Yehuda Schmidman, the president of the FPOA, was on before. Are you there, Yehuda?
Yehuda had to leave. I'm sorry, but I'm on the board.
Okay.
I can talk. So at the last meeting, there were certain requests for materials from the proposers of the new construction. And I haven't seen, there's nothing been updated on the city planning site. Have any of those materials, like the letter about the easement and any of the other requests that were made by the land use committee, were documents submitted that I don't know about?
Can I answer that, Mr.
Yeah.
Merkel?
Go ahead.
Yes, Seth, the drawings were revised. I can share them with you to show you that the 3 trees were added. In addition, the draft of the easement was created by the Mr. Lamb's family, and those were submitted to the community board. And in addition, the percolation tests came back and they were acceptable for dry wells, and those were submitted also to the land use committee.
So do
Mr.
we get,
Dorfman, I can have you share your screen if you'd like to pull that up. Feel free.
Yes. Okay, so I guess that pushes share. Is my screen now seen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the drawing revising the SNAD specifications for the trees. This is showing where the 3 additional trees were added to meet. Now we meet the and or standard. Instead of one or the other, we meet both. And this is just again showing an additional column that was requested by the city planning staff. Additionally, here is a copy of the draft easement that was submitted, and to the board. They can share that with you right now. In actuality, this is a private document. It doesn't need to be a public document at this point, but we're sharing it with you because that's what the client wants to do. It's a private family, and he likes to peacefully coexist with his neighbors. In addition, here is the percolation tests, which he has paid for. These are thousands of dollars, and the percolation tests were done in the area where we want to put the dry well, and in consultation with the soils engineer, they meet the minimum percolation requirements. And I want to emphasize again that this dwelling is having a proposed green roof, which means there's soil on the top of the roof, and it has water retention from the rain. So those 3 requests that were made 30 days ago have been complied with.
okay, it would be really useful for us in the community to get this information ahead of the meeting so that we could actually look at it and evaluate it, because this is like a massive dump of information in 1 minute, and I don't know about anybody else, but I certainly can't process it that quickly.
All right, let me make a suggestion. Assume for the sake of argument, Mr. Goldstein, that Mr. Dorfman gets this to you within a few days. Can you, within 2 weeks, give him any comments you might have and exchange it by way of a discussion so that we could narrow the gap?
That sounds fine to me, and then we'll postpone this matter to the next meeting.
Let me just ask, I'll deal that one issue at a time, okay?
Well,
So
I guess I'm not.
I hear you. Relax,
Okay.
relax.
I'm relaxed.
Hal, can you agree to a 1-month adjournment?
No.
All right, you are definitive on that?
The refer out time is till November 23rd. We're happy to work until November 23rd. This is a simple single-family house. We have been working on this for over a year with city planning. I'm happy to provide you what you need. There is enough perk to put dry wells here. City Planning's legal department agreed to allow an easement for maintenance so that this house could be built to preserve the natural area requirements, which is the intent of SNAD, to preserve the steep slope and the trees. We're trying to work with the community board. The owner has expended thousands of dollars in the last month to have these legal documents drafted, which aren't necessary right now. They're not necessary until we go into the Department of Buildings, which at this point could be months away. We still have to go, there's plenty of time to go through the public review process when we get to the Landmarks Preservation Commission. But this is, we are in, for all intents purposes, in compliance with city planning here in terms of building a house.
Hal, there are 2 choices that we have. One is to adjourn it, and the other wants to take a vote. I'm not a gambler, are you?
I'm assuming that the vote will come back as a negative, Mr. Mergler. And I think if we wait a month, we're still going to have a negative vote. Because I believe nobody wants to see a house built by Mr. Lamb. I've designed a fine house. I know I've been misquoted in the newspaper about the particular styles. In the designation report, it absolutely says that there are modern style houses here. There is no other place for us to build this house on this lot except to violate the natural areas, which we are permitted to do. We can build a 4-story house, which people are objecting to, but we're not building a 4-story house. And we don't have a peak roof that goes up 40 feet high, which we're allowed to do. We're building a modest house with the program that this family requires. I don't know what else to do, Mr. Mergler. We're working on this now since COVID started, March of 2020, and we're now at November of 2021 for a single family house. It's not a homeless shelter, which I really disagree with the perversion of language. Homeless residents are not customers. It's a charity. To give charity, and I give charity every single day of my life. But this is not charity. This is a private family wanting to build a house on their property for their own family's needs.
Mr. Dorfman, let me get to the guts of this thing.
Please.
In terms of my own personal opinion, right or wrong. Many in the community who are vocal have a real problem, not so much with the issues that I've raised or others have raised, such as the distance between two buildings and the like. Their problem is one of design. I have said, I don't know how many times, we are not the design police. That's not our charter function. If there be anybody with that function, it's the Landmark Preservation Commission. But we are responsible for complying with land use issues. It's been my historic experience here that at the end of the day, there's a good reason to try and work with FPOA, which has today at least the most reasonable kind of leadership that I can recall in a long, long time. And let me make this suggestion to you, Hal. I would like to ask you to let me defer this matter for 10 minutes to deal with another matter so you can chat with your client as to whether or not it would be okay to put it on for a final adjournment, and you and FPOA and Mr. Goldstein have a meeting. I will attend if you hold it before the 14th or after the 21st of November. That's up to you. Why don't you have that conversation, and I will come back to you in about 10 minutes. How's that?
Can I just, before I reach out to my client, I'll be happy to do that. And I appreciate this opportunity, Mr. Mergler, I truly do. But if I share, and if the client agrees to do so, we're sharing a percolation test. It's a test. We're sharing a draft of an easement, which basically grants between two properties the right of maintenance and access. What significantly different will happen if we delay this another month? I have to go back and ask him that. How is that going to change?
I'm going to give you one example from my little corner of the world.
Please.
I have a problem. I do. In terms of the distance between these two buildings, easement or no easement.
Mm-hmm.
It sets a precedent I cannot support.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let me go back to my client and ask him.
I would like, excuse me for 1 second. I'm going to have to leave soon, so if we could possibly do this in a little less than 10 minutes.
Mr. Goldstein, 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Now 25 past. I'll be back to you at 9:30. All right?
Thank you.
Can we get off the screen, please, Kira? Kira? Great. All right. Then, and Mr. Lara and Mr. Ravikoff, I note you're here. I promise you, you will get your moment in the sun. Okay? So let me now move on. Is the applicant or the council on BSA application 2021-29-BZ 3904 Orloff here?
Chuck, that's the applicant I emailed you about earlier.
Yep,
He had to
I
leave
know.
by 8 o'clock, so he'll be on in December.
All right.
However, he
good.
did send some answers to last month's questions I can distribute to the committee if you'd like.
Will you do that just to
Sure.
in writing? And I'll do two other quick pieces of business. So we'll put number 5 over to December. Do I have any comments, criticisms, or other things concerning the minutes of the October 2021 meeting? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any objections? Done. It's not full 5 minutes. Have you heard, Hal? Is there any old or new business? No. All right, then I guess we're going back to Mr. Dorfman and the screen.
Chair, am I allowed for a brief question, I guess, to you?
Go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if I remember correctly, on approval or on an assessment was expected from the landmarks on their original proposal. Did that ever come back?
My understanding is that the Landmarks Commission has taken the position here that it will not comment until we take a position. So that creates a bit of a conundrum. Since we are not the design police, we can either usurp that role and then have them veto it or do whatever they want, or we just take a position and devil take the hindmost. But they don't want to comment until then.
Thank you.
Hal?
I've spoken to my client and he respectfully appreciates your suggestion and will accept it.
I thank you. You will be the first item on the calendar of the December meeting. Now, Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Dorfman, here's the ground rules. You will get access, Mr. Goldstein, to the documents that have been shown. They ought to be maintained in confidentiality, particularly the easement. They are not to be shown to anyone other than those around you who are working directly with you, and they have to agree to confidentiality with you. Okay, that's number one. Number 2, you will get back to Mr. Dorfman with any comments and have a conversation with him within 2 weeks after you get the materials. And that conversation hopefully will embrace any concerns and issues you have. All right?
That sounds fair to me. Do you want, excuse me, to defer any of the comments that I was going to make to the board?
Yes. Yes, and I'll tell you why. I want to get all the pieces of issues that we can get out of the way, And then you'll have a basic issue coming to the board, which is really the following. They are not the design police, but would they like to become the design police?
So just to be clear, the FPOA board has made no comment one way or the other on the aesthetics of the proposed construction. That is not why we are here. We are here because the increase in density, the number of variances required are substantial, set a bad precedents, and are certainly out of character with the neighborhood. In fact, we went to the city maps myself and some other members of in Fieldston, and we measured the distance between the exterior walls of every 2 buildings that are on adjacent lots. That would be 188 measurements. The minimum distance is 11 feet. The median distance is 37 feet. There are only 5 properties in the entire Fieldston that have a distance of less than 16 feet. This is a huge change to the character of the neighborhood, increases the density, and sets a bad precedent. And I guess that's really why we're here. It has nothing to do with the exterior look of the building.
Mr. Goldstein, I thank you for that. I understand your position. You heard me articulate my
Yes.
thoughts on the subject earlier. Hal, you got to do some homework to see if you can figure that.
Chuck, I really want to say something. This
Go ahead.
project is not asking for any variances. The law provides for the word of modification in order to preserve the natural features. So please stop calling this a variance. It's not a variance application. We're talking about before wordsmiths. It's a modification, and the intent of the law put that in place to preserve things.
There are significant, I apologize.
Hey, guys.
There are a significant number of
Guys, I don't want to cut you guys off. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get the material to Mr. Goldstein. You 2 guys are going to talk.
Yes.
And you know, I speak for myself, not for my colleagues. They all have their opinions, as you've heard. But I tell you, you're too damn close. That's my view. All right. Is there? Oh, I promised Messrs. Lara and Ravikal. Mr. Lara.
Yes, so I have strong views on this, but I will not share them because I understand it's been put over. But Mr. Mordler and the other members of the committee, I just wanted to remind you, and this list is not everything, it's just what I recall. There were other issues, as I recall, that you had asked Mr. Dorfman to deal with, and I don't believe he's dealt with them. And I'll just name at least 2. 3. There may be more. 1, the easement was not supposed to be a maintenance easement. The discussion was an easement about whether the homes could be sold together or could be sold separately. I believe that remains unaddressed from the last meeting. That's number 1.
Hold on. This is not an easement in gross, Hal. This is an easement for maintenance. He's got a point. You better look at that.
There was never any contemplation. These are 2 separate zoning lots. In the future, they can be sold separately. And the purpose of the easement is to allow the new home to have future maintenance. It's also for construction and for future maintenance. There was never any conversation about whether they can be sold separately or together. I do not recall that at all.
Well, it was requested by the chair at the last meeting, 100%. And because you had said, go ahead, sir. Sorry, Mr. Mordler.
I got it.
And number 2 issue that, and again, my opinion I'll express, and I'll be delighted to attend the next meeting, but just issues that were not addressed that you, Mr. Chairman, asked for last time. You asked for a report of an arborist. I don't think there was one. So that's number 2.
I think they caved on the 3 additional trees.
I don't know. Perhaps that's the case. I'm not sure. Number 3, which I can tell you with a certainty, you suggested that the property owner meet with the neighbors. As his neighbor diagonally across the street, I can tell you that there's been no offer by our neighbor to meet with any of us at all. And I think that should matter when the merits of this are discussed at the next meeting. But I will withhold comment of my own opinion because I don't think it's appropriate since it's being put over. Thank you for your time and your diligence.
Thank you. Hal, you heard the comment about meat. Think about it. All right, Mr. Ravikal, you're it.
Thank you, Mr. Merdler. I have a question, and my wife, Randy Maidman, has a comment after my question. How does one measure distance between a building and a lot line? Is a wood deck considered in that distance?
I don't understand what you mean.
The current,
No, it's the building wall.
the building wall. So a wood deck has no bearing on
Correct.
distance between two properties,
Correct.
even if the wood deck crosses the new property line?
Correct. There are permitted obstruction rules for those type of things, decks, and there's a whole list, but they're not based on the side yard requirements. It's the building wall
Including the rear yard as well?
for all the walls.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Done. Thank you all for your attention. And Mr. Lara, thank you particularly for holding your fire until the next meeting.
My pleasure, sir. Good night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.